talk about the evolution of barefoot shoes, and then what this new company you've created is building upon what's been there to add to that.
So I was an early advocate, early adopter of five-toed shoes. I thought Vibram had done a great job putting these shoes together. I wore five-toed shoes exclusively for 15 years. But there was never attention paid to, I think, the aesthetics of the shoes. Number one, I never really liked the way the shoes looked, and I also felt that they were too minimalist. So when Chris McDougall wrote the book Born to Run, came out in 2010, he talked about running barefoot, the fact that feet are meant to be bare and in contact with the ground, and your feet are supposed to feel the temperature, the texture of the ground underneath. And every time you take a step, the brain, by the time you weight that front foot, the brain has all the information it needs on how to bend the arch, bend the toes, roll the ankle outward, maybe bend the knee, flex the hip, to absorb the shock of that footfall, whether it's walking or sprinting or jumping or running. So minimalist footwear became a big thing, starting with McDougall's book in 2010. One of the problems was that his argument was so compelling that people went out and bought minimalist shoes and decided, I'm going to run 7 miles the first day. And they would hurt themselves because these are typically people who were avid runners who had trained in thick, cushioned shoes, whose feet had been literally atrophied as a result of being stuck in these thick, cushioned, restrictive shoes. And then they put on a minimalist shoe, and now they're asking their feet to perform all of these muscular contractions that they hadn't been doing for the previous decade or two of running in thick, pillowy, cushioned shoes. So there was a little bit of a backlash to it because people said, well, these minimalist shoes must be bad for you because people are getting injured. Well, it wasn't they were bad for you. They were actually great. And the research over the last few decades since then has proven that humans perform better barefoot if they've trained to do it. And minimalist footwear is better for you. So having taken this on having only worn minimalist footwear for the last 2 decades, I really wanted to address this issue that I'd had with the fact that I didn't think that, number one, some of the minimalist footwear did not account for the fact that, in fact, some of it was too thin, right? It was too minimalist. And so you would put on this minimalist footwear, but then I would walk 3 or 4 miles on pavement or concrete or tile or marble or hardwood floors, and I'd get bone bruises because the feet that we have today that evolved over millions of years evolved over dirt and grasslands and relatively forgiving surfaces that changed with every step. The tilt of the footfall changed with every step because there were no really flat surfaces. And that's how our feet evolved. And now we get to, okay, well, barefoot is the way to go. But then you get out on pavement or sidewalks or concrete, and you realize that our feet we're not ever really developed to have that sort of exposure to hard surfaces. So the first thing we wanted to do was find that sweet spot, that ideal amount of cushioning that provides enough cushioning for the foot to go walk 10 or 12 or 15 miles on concrete or pavement, but also still be able to feel every little undulation. So we wanted a shoe where you could, like you walk on cobblestones, you feel every single change in the cobblestones. You can feel a crack when you walk on a crack, or a manhole cover. You can feel the knurling on a manhole cover or a stick or a stone, or when you're on the trails, be able to step and have your foot land in a different orientation every time because of the nature of the rocks on a trail, but have it be such that your brain immediately gets the feedback and knows exactly, again, how to scrunch the arch, how to bend the toes, how to roll the ankle, how to flex the knee. So we came up with the term is we reinvented the shoe from the ground up, but we came up with a shoe which we call Piluva. and it is a great looking shoe. We've got a bunch of different styles. We've got a number of top athletes that are using the shoe now, training in the shoe, benefiting from it. We've got, I've got a cadre of 60 and over women who only wear Paluvas because they're comfortable. And in the gym, these are women who walk 6, 8, 10 miles a day on the concrete in Miami or in LA, where I am now, who go to the gym and whose trainers will say, look, your balance is so much better because you can splay your toes outward. So I think one of the bottlenecks for people adopting a 5-toed shoe was this idea that they don't look that great. Well, we think they look great. We think they look really cute. But what you say, why do you need a 5-toe articulation in a shoe? Well, that's every time you land on an uneven surface or a different surface, you want your toes to respond individually. You want that big toe to be activated. You want that big toe to be the last thing that pushes off. You don't want the big toe scrunched over against all the other toes, which every other shoe tends to do. You literally want gloves for your feet. And that's what we've created here. I've got one of our latest designs here. This is coming out in a little while, but this is what one of our shoes looks like. It's made to look like a real shoe. It is a real shoe, but but it's still less than 1 centimeter thick at the heel, so you can feel the ground underneath. You can see the 5-toed nature of this, so the toes all articulate. The toes will, depending on what you're trying to do, what you're stepping on, the toes will bend individually, and that's one of the best, I think, attributes of a shoe like this is you want to feel everything you walk on. When we're walking on uneven surfaces, we call it foot candy. It feels good. Jesse, when you go outside in the grass and you take your shoes off and you walk around in the grass, you can't help but have a smile on your face. Would you agree?
There's something that makes you happy about it, yeah.
It just makes you happy. And that's the ground feel. That's the being able to feel the surface underneath your feet. And your brain is now going, okay, now I get it. Whereas if you wear nothing but a thick cushioned shoe with a raised heel, the brain has no information on a pothole that you're stepping in or on a crack or on a rock that you're stepping on sideways. The brain has to kind of guess, oh, maybe I roll the knee a little bit. I don't know, maybe I'll tweak my knee. And by giving up all of that haptic input, all of that sensory input, we court injury. We tend to get either knee problems or hip problems, or our Achilles gets shortened or tight because the calf is because the heel is raised. Now the calf muscle is shorter and the Achilles doesn't get a chance to fully extend itself. People have bunions because their big toe is scrunched against the rest of their toes in a tight shoe, right? Women who wear high heels all day, I just can't imagine how you can't, how you can live that way. But I mean, women, don't stop wearing those high heels. They look great. But spend some time in a minimalist shoe where your feet can relax and realign and strengthen themselves. And that's really what we're offering here. So we have a full line of shoes, from dress shoes to workout shoes to hiking shoes. See if I can. I'm in my son's office right now.
While you're digging around there, I'll ask you a couple follow-up questions. I've had a couple pairs of shoes by this company called Vivo, and they had a toe box that was expanded. It wasn't the individual toes, but the toe box was wider. Is that kind of an in-between, or
that's an in-between.
Find that the individual toes makes a big difference on top of that?
No. So for most people who've been wearing regular shoes their whole lives, their feet are messed up. I mean, people have messed up feet. It's scary how much the footwear industry has destroyed feet. And so when you take off your dress shoes, your pointed Italian dress shoes, or your high heels, or your Converse, which always have a kind of a narrow foot box, your toes are still messed up, and they don't automatically find some natural relaxed splay outward, they're still messed up. So when you put messed up feet in a shoe like Vivo Barefoot, and Vivo's a great company. I love those guys. But when you put messed up feet in there, the feet are still messed up. It's just a wide toe box. So it's not continuing to compress them together. Look, that's the reason like 20 million pairs of toe separators, toe spacers have been sold in the last few years. People recognize that once you take your shoes off, that doesn't address the problem. If you take your shoes off and your toes are still all gnarled and stuck together, you got to sort of force them apart. You have to do exercises. You have to do things to improve this toe splay. Well, with Peluva, your toes have these individual toe boxes, and once the toes are in there, they have this automatic splay. It's like wearing toe spacers all day, except that now you can walk 2 miles, 10 miles, whatever, in them. You can work out in them, and the whole time you're doing it, your toes are being strengthened individually as a result of their having been separated and allowed to articulate individually.
You asked me there about being happier when I'm barefoot. And I find myself in the warmer months here in Ontario, when I'm in the yard, in the house, I'm always barefoot. My feet are usually black by the end of the day. And there is something I love, and it's hard to articulate what it is about being barefoot in the grass, which is obviously a step up from a shoe like the Peluva, which is where my curiosity goes, the grounding effect, which is obviously something in a shoe you're not going to get. I've seen shoes before that have a little thing in the bottom that allows you to ground while you're walking. First of all, do you find grounding is additional benefit on top of barefoot walking? And then have you ever thought about incorporating something where you're actually getting that connection with the ground in a Peluva shoe?
Yeah, so there is something to be said for grounding. That's the positive ions that you're addressing by being in skin contact with the ground. Earth is throwing off this field of ions. Now, shoes that have this plug in them that's supposed to improve grounding, I'm not buying it. I'm not yet buying that this metallic plug is enough to offset um, the what's the word? The prohibition of that. So leather shoes allow some grounding. There are some shoes that have these plugs that you can put in. We've looked at it. We're not convinced that the trade-off, which is that you lose some of the ground feel because the plug is solid and it has to remain solid in order to conduct electricity. So we look into it. We're in talks with some of the people that hold patents on these things, but we're not yet convinced that giving up that full ground feel that we offer right now is worth the compromise just to get a plug in there. But that's not to say we're not going to head in that direction. But no one's really doing I don't think anyone's doing a great fully grounding shoe right now yet.
Okay. And the last piece that came up for me as you're explaining there is the connection to the brain. Because I think a lot of times when people associate walking barefoot or being in a shoe like a Peluva is helping with their arches, helping with the musculature of the foot. And you brought it to the connections to the brain. So now that's a more holistic whole body impact of walking in a shoe like a Peluva. Talk more about that brain connection.
Yeah. So if you've ever had a foot massage or had reflexology done, almost all of reflexology focuses on the foot, and they can map the foot and all of the nerve connections from the brain down to the foot, and from the different organs down to the foot. And it's the brain and the big toe that have the strongest connection. So by activating the big toe, you are addressing that full connection from the top of the head down to the big toe. That seems to be where the brain wiring sort of ends in the foot. Also, if you're in the gym and you're doing any sort of weight training that involves lower body, people will say you have to activate the big toe in order to activate the glute. The glute and the big toe are connected there, right? So with most professional or elite, weightlifters and bodybuilders, they will go barefoot when they do deadlifts or when they do squats or lunges, or if they don't go barefoot, they wear minimalist footwear. They do not want to be wearing these shoes because they want the toe splay and they want the activation of the big toe to activate the glute, which is the primary driver of the power when you're doing a squat or a deadlift. So there's some examples there of this connection where we have minimum 10,000 nerve endings in each foot, and then we tend to bypass all of that important information when we put on regular shoes. So the idea behind Palooza was to, again, as you said, to allow every muscle, what we call the intrinsic muscles, the small muscles of the feet, to be involved in every step and not be cast with arch support and bound up at the front and elevated heel so that all of the impact starts from the ankle and goes up the body and up the kinetic chain. That's not what we want. We want the foot to be involved. We want all the muscles of the foot to be involved in every step we take, which is the arch, the plantar fascia, all of the digits, all of the metatarsals, all of the area, the ankle rolling, all of these intrinsic muscles in the foot. We want them involved in every footstep, if for no other reason than to unburden the rest of the body higher up the kinetic chain. I mean, that's what feet are for. And again, it drives me crazy that the footwear industry just, for the most part, refuses to acknowledge how important feet are. Look, they're our connection with Earth. They're a connection with the environment. They're what we use to communicate with the environment around us. And then it's like saying, I want to play piano with mittens on. How's that? How's that working for you? So yeah, our mission is to change the way the world moves, and we think we're headed down that right direction.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Dietary fiber is not that necessary if you are taking in, for instance, larger amounts of collagen-based products, because the gut bacteria, the gut biome loves collagen.